Hello and welcome to SAE Tomorrow Today. I am your host, Grayson Brulte. Before this episode begins, please kindly take a moment to subscribe and be notified when a new episode is released. Keep up with the twists, turns, and acceleration of the mobility industry between episodes with SAE's incredible SAE Smart Brief. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe and receive the latest industry articles, updates, news, and announcements straight to your inbox. On today's episode, I sat down with Aaron Jefferson, Vice President of Product at Luminar, to discuss Luminar's effectiveness through introducing safe autonomy to the world, their partnership with Volvo, and how Aaron uses his voice to propel diversity and inclusion programs across the organization. And away we go. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to the podcast, Aaron.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Super happy to have you here. You've got a great story. You're working for a great company that's changing the world. And before we get into all the really cool, fun stuff, you've had one heck of a journey. And early on in your career, you developed a relationship with a gentleman named Dwight Howard, not the basketball player, but a very influential gentleman on your life. That relationship changed your life as Mr. Howard was a mentor to you. And he said, go into automotive. It's a great field. And that conversation, Mr. Howard, changed your life. Can you talk about what that's meant to you?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of a few examples. You know, besides my family, I had a middle school teacher, Mrs. Banks. I had high school teachers, Mr. Gorbel, Mrs. Gardy. I've always had like these moments where I was kind of just going along with the flow, and someone said, "Hey, why don't you think about this or think about that?" And in those school examples, it was math. I was just really into math and really good, and they, I'd say, pushed me toward engineering. And then I had gone to school. I had a few internships, and I ended up having an internship at Allison Transmission Truck and Bus. So this is a oily transmission plant, and I was an electrical engineer. A really great summer, but my mentor at the time, assigned mentor, was Dwight Howard, not the basketball player, and he said, so what do you want to do? And I just shared some of my thoughts, and I ended up getting some information on Delphi at the time. Didn't know much about them, so I went to him and said, "Hey, I have this opportunity for maybe a job opportunity," because I was at the end of my internships. And he said, "So think about where you want to be in 10 years. Do you want to be working on big trucks and buses, or do you want to be doing some cool things on cars?" And I loved cars, and it made sense in terms of all the different possibilities for an electrical engineer there. And so I made the decision to go there. And then probably 6 months to a year after I went there, he followed. He had already had something in the works. He didn't tell me that at the time, but he too was getting into some more exciting things. So really helped me out, because Delphi was just a really good place to grow. And it really gave me a great foundation for what I'm doing now, which is the ADAS and AD space.
And you've had a heck of a run there at Delphi. You rose through the ranks in leading ADAS product management and strategy process. What was that like? And what did Mr. Howard think? Like, okay, Aaron did it. He followed my advice, and he's doing really great things.
Well, it was interesting because, I started off as an electrical. I was always around safety engineers, and so started off in braking electronics, and then went to suspension, and then went over to occupant detection systems, which Delphi had a really unique technology. We had 90% of the market. So it was a growth time for the organization. But back then, it was also a time when you would get in there and you would have just seasoned engineers that could spend time with you and train you and teach you. And development cycles were 4 and 5 years, unlike today where it's 2 years max to get something, from concept out the door. And so I did that. I actually had the chance to take an assignment in Mexico, came back and became a manager at a fairly young age, managing the electrical design group. And I had got my MBA as well. And it was like, hey, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And we had a downturn, the 2008 timeframe. There weren't a lot of moves. It was, hey, let's just make sure we get the product out the door. Let's try to keep everything afloat. And as soon as we started to come out of that, around 2010, there was this huge, I'd say, corporate kind of mandate of, hey, we need to start developing a product strategy and product planning, and we need to incorporate that. So I was one of the inaugural, the first kickoff of that activity within Delphi for ADAS. And so it was probably the largest growth space that that we had at the time, and I was able to work with teams and lead that. And I think Dwight was always proud. I think he was proud of the fact that he at least gave me. He never said, "Hey, you should do this." He just kind of gave me hints and asked me questions that made me think about things. And also just proud to see that somebody he supported was being allowed to grow in the organization in their career. So.
And you've grown a lot. You rose through leadership at Delphi, and now at Luminar, you're building the future. You're building really incredible LiDARs with different architectural designs from your competitors. What are the main benefits to Luminar's LiDARs?
Well, the main benefits are that we solve a problem that's required for level 4 highway autonomy to be safe and also just to be enabled. There are, first is our range and our resolution. We always talk about the requirements that matter. And it really goes into, what's the performance that you really need to detect small objects far out in the road, dark objects at all times of day, in all weather conditions, such that if someone is not paying attention or their eyes are off the road the way that you want to, release the driver from the driving function, that you can actually do something about that in time and not damage your vehicle, not cause another accident, things of that nature. It's really a safety aspect to it. And so, that aspect, the performance aspect, there's a ton of LiDAR on the market, but none quite like ours in terms of delivering the functionality. And then we also have the perception on top of that from our software group. So, being able to take the data and then understanding what to do with that data and how to, then allow the vehicle to function is very unique. The other part I think is somewhat unique. And when we talk to customers, it's more and more important, is just the ability to manufacture, test, develop, to have it be automotive grade, not necessarily just something that you demo. And that is becoming more and more critical. They want trust that there's something that is going to be, at the right price, productionizable at the end of the day, manufacturable with reliability and quality. And I think those two things really separate us from the rest of the pack.
I would add to that you have a really great team of individuals that works at Luminar from the various different individuals I know inside of your company. They're great people, they're honest people, and they're trustworthy people. And so I love that you hit on trust, because I grew up in Connecticut and we had Volvo, and all the moms got the Volvos because it was safe to move the kids around and they had all the safety aspects. And Volvo built that trust. If you put your child in a Volvo, it's safe. And Luminar, when I saw that you had the deal with Volvo, I was like, okay, this is cool. You're building on a heritage of safety, a heritage of trust. Can you talk about that relationship, please?
Yeah. So, the great thing about Volvo, and I have history with them even at Delphi when we were introducing the camera technology, what was called a CADS program back then. They have safety in mind, and our vision is, making highway autonomy safe and ubiquitous. And the safety aspect of it is really critical. What I think is really unique in the opportunity that we have is we're working with Volvo to understand and solve the real world problems. So we're not necessarily just trying to meet a spec or just trying to be academic in the analysis, but it's really what are the situational things on the highway we need to worry about, and then how do we solve for those? And we're working together on all aspects of the design, the integration. If you think about our placement in the crown of the vehicle, that was joint development, joint discussion activity between the two organizations to try to make sure that, where do we get the most benefit from the sensor? How do we, if you think about your eyes and where they reside in the vehicle, is that vantage point of value, and what kind of value does that bring to the point where, to change a vehicle overall aesthetic and design concept takes a lot of work. And so there was a lot of commitment from the Volvo side, and then commitment from our side to really try to deliver that technology. So it's been a really great relationship. We have to deliver. It's not a friendship, so it's not like they're going to let us off the hook if we don't deliver things. But our intent is to be successful, and then they are also vested in us to be successful. For them, in order for them to really flourish, they want to see us deliver the technology to the quality and to the performance that we've started to develop towards. So pretty exciting, and like you mentioned, the right customer to really develop with.
And I want to point out to the listeners that It's downright sexy looking where that LiDAR is. It's not like you got a nuts and bolts and you put it on the side or you put it here. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful integration, beautiful design of vehicle, beautiful placement of the LiDAR. So I'm a consumer and I say, oh, okay, this SP2 module vehicle from Volvo, this is really good. I like the LiDAR. What's the benefit to me from a consumer perspective? Why would I want to go for that versus another Volvo that doesn't have a Luminar LiDAR?
So the benefit is, as an end consumer, you really get, we try to focus on two things. You get a highway autonomy, which today's systems, a fair amount of the systems, you can be on a highway, say drive from the Midwest out to California or whichever direction you want to go. And on highways, you can usually take your feet off the pedals. It can do ACC and really control the vehicle that way. But hands-off is not something that is very widely spread. And even then, if you're allowed hands-off, the minute the vehicle can't detect lanes due to clouding or sunlight or inclement weather, things of that nature, you usually get a ding and it just hands back control. And so essentially, if you have a drive you do every day, I drive the same route when we were going to the office. I drive the same route every day, and it becomes a mundane, boring drive. Half the time, you don't even remember how you got there. It's just in the back of your mind, you're driving, right? So it's more of, let the vehicle do the driving function. Usually it's not, it hasn't had a long day. It hasn't had to deal with kids. It didn't skip its morning coffee. It's pretty consistent in terms of the performance of the vehicle. And essentially you can just disconnect from the vehicle, let the vehicle drive. So that's the highway autonomy aspect of what this vehicle would bring with that design in the crown. And then the other aspect is just safety. If you look at a lot of the systems today, and Volvo leads in this area in terms of camera, radar, a vehicle swerves in front of you suddenly or brakes in front of you suddenly, or there's a crossing pedestrian that pops out of nowhere. Today's systems are pretty good, but they're really designed to mitigate an accident or lessen the severity, not to eliminate and avoid. And so today's systems are also kind of tuned not to have false activation. So you don't want to brake for no reason. That's very dangerous. And so it's really about the confidence level of the camera in combination with the fusion of the radar, which causes some limitations in terms of how reliable and how repetitive you can be in terms of that actuation. Versus once there's LiDARs in the vehicle, not only do you get highway autonomy, but you also get the enhanced safety. You get the exact distance measurement from the vehicle in front of you or from the object in front of you. You get longer range, you get performance at night, you get performance in inclement weather. And so you just get more availability of a system that you're paying for, and then you get better performance in terms of safety and in autonomy. So it really is a holistic solution that is also, again, just taking, I'd say, Volvo to the next step of safety.
You're right about taking Volvo to the next step of safety, because Henrik Green, the chief technology officer for Volvo Cars, said the following during the press release announcing your partnership. Autonomous drive has the potential to be one of the most life-saving technologies in history if introduced responsibly in safety. You're introducing the technology responsibly in safety. Volvo's introducing it responsibly in safety. Is that where Luminar's mission to make autonomous transportation safe and ubiquitous comes from? Is the culture of the company's dedication to safety and doing what's right?
I think so. I think what's bigger is, and I'll have to give Austin credit here. When I interviewed with Luminar, it wasn't about vehicles magically driving around by themselves on level 5. It was, hey, we can really save lives. We can really be effective at introducing autonomy to the world, and it has to be safe. And if you think about systems in the market today, there's a certain level of safety that lacks in those systems, whether it's you're in automated mode and then all of a sudden the system times out and immediately hands the control back over to the driver, or I'd say misunderstood, say marketing about what a vehicle's capability really is versus what it can do, and so, or what it should be doing. And so, I think from Austin's standpoint is, I don't want to just develop a technology that's nice and barely available, or nice and somewhat misleading. I want to put something out on the market that really is addressing the safety issues and the concerns. And again, it's you have highway speed, highway accidents. You still have 35,000 people in the U.S. yearly dying on the roadways, 1 million globally. So and if you look at it, it's a huge cause of death. I think 18 to 34-year-olds or something like that. Still, taking a lot of talent and human capital away from us. So it really is trying to address that action. And it's nice to be able to push a button and sit back and drive. It's 1,000 times better to know that you can do that safely and that you won't cause more harm by doing that. And that's exactly where our focus is.
You're right about the long stretches of highway from my house to Orlando. It's a 3.5, 4 hour drive, and it is just boring. It's the same flat stuff. And if I could turn your system on the highway and gets me there, I go visit your headquarters or visit everybody's favorite friend, Mickey Mouse, and I get there and I'm not stressed out and bored. And speaking of long highways, you have a deal with Daimler trucks to develop the Lidars for heavy 18-wheelers, and those are long drives. That's impressive. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. And that one's really exciting because, if you think about, again, safety and the need, trucking is a key space. I've always said, as a personal driver, I trust truck drivers more than I trust regular drivers because they at least have to go through more to get their certification, right? But they're on the road a long time. They get tired. And trucks are difficult to drive, and they're huge. And so, with Daimler Truck, it really is around them understanding, again, the safety aspect, but also the autonomy capability and what you can release there. So the agreement really is around the development of the technology to enable autonomy. And it's kind of hub to hub. There's a lot of activity going in the southern U.S. Nice, like you said, flat, boring roads, clear, sunny all the time type of situations where it'd be very easy to implement, I'd say, automated technology as long as you have the right sensing capability. And I think Daimler Truck saw that in our technology. And what they're going to do is going to be pretty amazing. I think if you think about, again, you have people ordering all the freight movement globally, really. Trucks play a huge part in that, but there's also fuel savings that comes along with it. There's enhanced safety, so fewer accidents, lost cargo, more lives. When a vehicle that heavy hits something, it can be really tragic. And so, our sensing technology is actually ideal for trucking. You get to see further, you get earlier detections than you do with radar and camera. You can see in all kinds of weather. Trucks don't get to pick and choose when they drive, and so. It's really is a nice partnership, and it's nice to have the other side of the market in trucking because it's going to continue to grow. We've always actually said that level 4 for trucking would come first because the business case is there in terms of being able to either eliminate the driver or allow the driver to be present longer, and just the pure play in terms of business and cargo and the expense with that. So. Right now, we're doing both in parallel, and Daimler Truck's a great partner to do that with.
The business aspect of autonomous trucking to me is really interesting because it seems like I call it the great pivot to trucking, where companies that work on robo-taxis now have decided that they're partnering with a big truck company to do it. And the other thing that I want to point out for a truck, they take a long time to stop because they're so heavy, and if you slam the brakes on, it's not going to stop from here to a stop sign. And your LiDARs can see 250 meters away, providing 7 seconds of reaction time. That could mean life or death in certain situations. How is that possible?
Absolutely. And that's 250 meters away with, I'd say, with a certain size target, a small target. If you talk about a larger target, like another vehicle or another truck, you're talking about even further. And really is made possible because of the architecture that we've chosen. And again, it goes back to the requirements that matter, the range and the resolution, not necessarily just being able to see that far, but understanding what you're seeing, putting enough points on target that you can actually detect what that image and what that object is, understanding how big it is, understanding if it's moving away or approaching, just all aspects of the environment. And then the full 120-degree field of view where we really understand what's the landscape of the road. So it's not necessarily just what's directly in front of you, but what's also in your adjacent lane, what's in your crossing path, things of that nature. It's really important for trucking. It's important for all aspects of vehicles and driving. But for trucking, it's just really clear that, again, as you mentioned, you can't just react late and then stop and then save everything. versus the car. So for us, it really was, again, what problem are we solving? There are cameras that can see really far. You have an 8 megapixel, 12 megapixel cameras that can see really far, but cameras can only estimate distance. They can't necessarily understand exactly how fast they're approaching an object. And radar can see somewhat, but they don't necessarily know what they're looking at. So all within this one sensor, I get a 3D environment, a 3D map of the environment. I know exactly what's in front of me. I know if it's in my eagle lane or the adjacent lane. I know how fast I'm approaching it, and I know what to do about it. And so that's really, again, the architecture we've chosen is that we don't have to necessarily sacrifice the range for the resolution or the field of view. We have to do it all. It all matters in order to really enable that truck to drive safely.
Would an example of a small object in the highway, something, say a piece of lumber fell off the back of a truck or a sandbag fell off, like those objects that happens every day that you would never really think of, that your liar say, wait a second, there's an object in the road, it's not right, let's do a safety maneuver? Is that what kind of you're referring to when you say a small object?
Yeah, so the main object used is really a small tire. So a small black tire, it's dark, very low reflectivity, and being able to see that object as far as possible, because you don't know if that tire has a rim or if it's an empty tire. And with the rim, it's more dangerous. With an empty tire, there are plenty of people who have hit an empty tire and been upset, but everything was okay. But you don't want to hit either. And now, it's the industry is looking beyond that. So I've been driving personally. I've seen a shovel on the road that probably won't cause a huge accident, but you don't want that flipping and hitting in your car. I've seen a ladder fall across the road, the entire road. And the scenario is I'm traveling at a high rate of speed. I see this ladder. I'm in a low vehicle. I can't just surmount the ladder, but there's also a semi trailer right behind me, so I can't hit the brakes and take my time around it. Right? You don't, cardinal rule. You don't brake on the highway. So it's being able to detect all those types of situations that are corner cases, but they happen. And so it's what's the height of the object that you understand that something's there, and try to decide if you want to drive over it. How wide is it? Is it across your lane? Do you need to change lanes? Can you just move over a little in your lane and avoid it? If you think about your daily driving tasks, it's the same for that vehicle. We're trying to give that granularity of information so that the vehicle knows exactly what to do about it or not do about it.
Is that where your expertise in software comes in? Because you're not just building the LiDARs, you're also building the software.
Yeah, that's where the perception comes in. And there's one thing to, have enough LiDAR, what we call points on target, and have enough angular resolution to detect something, but then to be able to understand exactly what that is. What's that data coming back? And that's no different than a perception for radar, perception for camera. But the thing about the LiDAR is you get such rich data that you can actually understand, okay, this is something I've seen before. You can annotate that, you can log that and understand exactly what it is. You can classify it. But the nice thing about LiDAR is we don't have to necessarily classify before we react. So I can be driving, my LiDAR can detect that there's an object in the road and it's of a certain size. I don't have to label that a person, an object, a car. I can just say, hey, that's something I don't want to hit. And I know that without necessarily taking the time it takes to calculate and understand exactly what that, or classify exactly what that is. But the perception is also about, detecting lanes, understanding lane from road boundaries, from road edge, being able to detect, say, a person that stands in front of a vehicle. So you want to be able to isolate those two objects. Those are two different things that could go two separate directions at any time. So it's really about seeing environment and pulling out the information from the scene that the LiDAR is giving you, and then saying, okay, what do I do about that? And so really solid perception team led by Christoph Schroeder. And, we I'd say put as much stock into that software development as we do the LiDAR. The LiDAR is the enabler, but our software is pretty unique as well.
Let's look at a scenario. We talked about highway driving. Let's say you have an SAE level 3+ system, and there's an individual behind the wheel in the vehicle driving on the highway. And if there's a tire in the road, does that the HMI come in and says, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Driver, object in the road must re-engage to drive around? Or how does that work?
So ideally, what you would really want to do is you want to detect that tire in enough time that you say, this is a tire on the road. I don't want to drive over it. And even if it's a level 3+ system, You could say we are going to do a lane change or a lane changeover. If I can detect that there's nothing in my adjacent lane, I know that on my road I have more than one lane. I can do that. The other aspect of scenario is there's something in my lane. I don't know if it's safe to maneuver around it. Driver, I want to give you enough warning to where you can come back and basically take control of the vehicle. I think the industry would admit that level 3 is one of the more dangerous scenarios or driving levels, because how do you cognitively understand exactly what the state the driver's in? Should they come back? If they come back, will they cause more damage by taking over? And that's a full kind of system approach of, what does an OEM really want to release to the market? It's one of the reasons why the range and resolution and the other factors are so important, because if I can understand as a vehicle and know exactly what to do, then I get to take the error of the driver completely out of the scenario. And that's really what level 4 is about. It's not necessarily to hand over when things aren't okay. It's to try to make sure that I can handle all situations, even if I slow down and maneuver, slowly, however the vehicle wants to handle it. But that handover is tricky, and that goes just beyond our LiDAR and our perception. That is a full system solution that I think the industry's still trying to figure out, if I'm being honest.
No, you're 100% honest, and you're 100% right, because you don't know if somebody's groggy, if they're tired, or you mentioned this earlier, but I want to emphasize this. Your LiDARs don't have emotions. They don't get upset about something. Right. They don't break up with their boyfriend or girlfriend.
Exactly.
Their job is to see the road and make sure that Aaron gets home or to the office safely.
Exactly. Consistently, every time. Exactly.
Is that why LiDAR is so key to achieving level 4 and level 5?
Well, I think there's a couple reasons. One is, you kind of want triple redundancy in terms of modality of sensing. So when you start thinking about being able to detect an object and what's in front of you, you have radar, you have camera, and I say pretty common systems today, and then you have LiDAR. LiDAR is the third sensing element that, at least from a modality standpoint, covers you in terms of if something fails with the other two, I should be able to, at least in a degraded mode, get to where I need to get to, or at least safely get off the road. And so from a redundancy standpoint, that's what LiDAR really is the third leg of that. But in terms of really enabling, say, level 4 and understanding exactly what's going on in the environment, just the accuracy of the LiDAR, the detections, being able to understand where you are on the road and map that out. And the nice thing about it is, for me, is with the high resolution that we have, the range, so you can detect, understand the distance, understand if it's in your lane. You can have a full understanding of the scene in one sensor. Today, you can have an understanding of a scene, but you won't have the exact distance measurement unless you then bring in radar. So you have to fuse that information. And so they're dependent on one another. If one is missing, then you don't have the full capability. Versus LiDAR, you can do all of that in one sensor. And so it is also a sensor that takes your understanding of the environment to another level. And I think that's what's exciting about it. When I talk to our software engineers, especially the ones responsible for function, as we start talking about how do we enable and develop our own full stack solution, we have functional engineers that say, I've never had this level of data with which to enable an AEB function or a lanes keeping function or an ACC function. And so that level of data improves. It's like garbage in, garbage out. If you have great data in, then I can really do some really great functional work. If I don't have such great data in, then it compromises my functional work. And I think that's what's really exciting and enabling about the LiDAR as well.
Your LiDAR is game changing, and I remember, was it 2 or 3 years ago that your team at CES took me in the truck, and and Jason was there, and Austin was there, and you showed me the resolution, and I'm like, no, come on, this is not. I was just so completely blown away by the quality of your product, and when we got to know each other prior to this podcast, I was extremely impressed and proud that not only do you do an incredible job leading product at Luminar, you take leadership on issues that are important to you. You take a stand and you do the right thing. And at Luminar, you lead the diversity and inclusion team. I was like, okay, I want to talk about this because it's something it's important that hasn't really been talked enough about in our space. Could you talk about why you decided to take that leadership mantle?
Yeah, I think, it's ironic. I've always been included in various roles at various companies. I've always said I'm like a closet HR person. I've always been included. I've always been included in these personal type of issues. And for me, being African American and living through last year and all the different tragedies that happened last year, on top of COVID, it's just really important that I think it's more than just I have this great job at this great company, and that I'm not sharing that and finding a way to pour that back into my community. And if I think about how I grew up and where I came from, there was always a program in Indianapolis. It was a lead program through Eli Lilly. There was always something that brought STEM into my life before I even knew what STEM was. And again, I mentioned those teachers and those schools that support it. So, individually, there's a organization called Heroes Alliance, and they basically bring STEM into Detroit school systems. And so I'm active in that. Luminar is going to be a sponsor for that organization. So I'm really excited about that. And that group's then competes in a solar car race. So they have to build their whole solar car. And again, it's just really giving kids access to things that don't naturally just come to them. So it's that aspect. And then also just the social responsibility of being able to say, hey, we believe in diversity. We believe in inclusion. We don't believe in racism or racist thought. That's really important. If America is America, but then even the automotive industry has been very traditional and old school. It's changing some, but I think that it's just really important that if you have a voice and as an organization, I'd say we have, Austin talks all the time, hey, we're a great company now. We're huge because we've gone public. And so we do have a lot of power and say, and to use that positively, I'm really excited about that. We recently joined the group CADIA, who's really about DEI activity in the automotive industry. And there was someone from FCA presented, their plan and what they're doing internally. And I remember when, after George Floyd, GM made this huge announcement. So you start to see these organizations say, you know what, even if I'm not personally affected, I know someone or my workers are affected, or it's more personal. Everybody was at home watching that. And so it felt a little bit different, last year after that incident, that everyone wanted to take a step back and say, okay, maybe I've ignored this. Maybe it's time for me to be a little bit more active. And so I'm very proud that Luminar is supporting that. And we have a fair amount of activity that we're rolling up, new company. So we're trying to get things going. But there's no pushback. There's no, don't do this, don't try that. It's 100% commitment and support from the leadership team. And that's the first step.
That's a huge step, and it's a positive step. And you can say that, you're young, but your career has come full circle. You had Mr. Howard's a mentor to you, and now you're mentoring these children to the Alliance in Detroit. And I've had a lot of mentors over the year, and I've mentored a lot of individuals now that I'm older. I tell my wife I'm not ready for the home yet, but I'm getting up there. What does it mean to you when you see the smile and the joy that you mentioned, like the solar car, and you teach these kids because you've got this incredible product background? You might be like, well, if you did this and this, then all suddenly they get a little extra range. What is it like when you see that smile of joy when your mentorship was able for them to achieve something that they might not have been able to achieve?
I think it's great. I think, it's them achieve something they might not have been able to achieve, for them to experience things that they may not have experienced. I think to get, different perspectives. When I was going to college and there was no one to tell me, what engineering was or what it means or what the possibilities were, so it's very meaningful, more so just to know that the experience that they're getting and the understanding that they're being exposed to technology, professionalism, it's project management, it's engineering, it's all aspects, it's critical thinking, things of that nature. It becomes very important that they get access to that. It's there's a lot of situations where you sometimes, like if you're an artist and you're not given a canvas, you don't know how good or bad you are, right? And so it's that really, without that access, they don't have that canvas with which to grow and work on. And for me, it goes, it's ironic. I talk about my closet HR activity. I've had a lot of kind of informal mentor opportunities in some of the companies I've worked in as well. And what I also try to emphasize is, a lot of people that helped me throughout my career at Delphi, there was Mark Land, Mike Taney. There was some other people, they didn't necessarily look like me, but they noticed, something in me and said, okay, let me give him this opportunity, or let me put him in this position. And I've tried to do the same with several people. I've had a ton of people that just informally, we built a relationship, and, they came to me for any kind of advice or hey, this career move, that career move. And I think that's just as rewarding in terms of being able to at least land my thoughts or be that person that we used to joke that I had a psychiatrist couch in my office, because everybody would come by just to share and vent and get things off their chest. And I think I'm a good listener, so I would listen. But I also think I've given some pretty sound advice, and I've helped people along in their career the same way I was helped. And again, it's all about, giving back in whatever situation. So I really have enjoyed that aspect of my career as well.
Because when you give back, the opportunities are endless. And Aaron, as we look to wrap up this extremely insightful and interesting conversation, what would you like our listeners to take away with them about Lidar and Luminar in general?
I think that one of the main things I want our listeners to take away is that, yes, there are a lot of Lidar companies out there. However, don't be tricked or fooled by, I'd say, some of the missteps in terms of some certain organizations, and the performance. Don't allow some performance by one to overshadow the lack of performance in another area. We talk about all the requirements that matter: range, field of view, resolution, precision. All these different aspects of the LiDAR matter. And so, and then what's the common sense problem that you're solving? It's you're trying to see small objects. You're trying to see as far away as possible. You need to operate in all weather conditions and lighting conditions. And I think what's really unique about Luminar, and what really excited me, was you mentioned the trust in the people and leadership. The people that we bring on board all have the proper mission, and I think that is what excites me. There's no hidden agenda. We want to deliver the technology that really saves lives and it really enables autonomy. We haven't played games with our architecture. We really aren't making sacrifices just to say, hey, we have, say, a solid state design or this or that has to make compromise in order of performance. Our end goal is the performance. Our end goal is the safety. And so if you just, we don't bash other companies. We don't really go about doing it that way. But it's really just, we just try to show and prove. This is what our spec says we can do, and this is what our product we can show you we can do. And, don't be frustrated. The audience, don't be frustrated by a lot of the misclaimers and what goes on in the industry in terms of LiDAR. This is a real product, real production, and I'm really excited about what it's going to unlock for Volvo and our next set of customers to come.
I can't wait to hear about your next set of customers when you make them public, so we hope you come back here. And as we've heard on this podcast, Luminar is honest, they're trustworthy, and they're developing the future, but most importantly, the individuals, including Aaron and the whole leadership team and every employee at Luminar, are good people. They're really good people that you can learn a lot from, and it's a great company. And Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time on your busy schedule to come on SAE Tomorrow Today podcast.
Thank you for having me. Greatly appreciate it, and appreciate it. Love talking to you. Thanks, Chris.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to SAE Tomorrow Today. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, please kindly rate, review, and let us know what topics you'd like for us to explore next. Tune in next week to hear from Wiley R. McCoy and Roger S. Miners to discuss the rich history of McLaren engines. And be sure to follow us on LinkedIn to stay connected and continue the conversation.
SAE International makes no representations as to the accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. The information and opinions are for general information only. SAE International does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.